Views and opinions expressed in this episode of the Psychic Chat Show are those of the guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Gareth Lewis and the Psychic Chat Show podcast. Any content provided by our guests are of their opinion and not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organisation, company, individual, or anyone or anything. Welcome to the Psychic Chat Show podcast with me, Gareth Lewis. This week I have with me Stephen Bird from Scotland. Stephen believes we are not alone in this universe and aliens can come and visit us. Stephen says he saw his first alien at the age of 15 and since then has seen a number of UFOs. He also believes that there is no such thing as coincidence and everything is meant for a reason. So what do you think? Do aliens exist? And do UFOs come and visit us? Well, let's see what our guest Stephen Bird thinks. Welcome, Stephen, and I'm glad you've joined us today on the Psychic Chat Show. Are you okay?
I'm fine. Delighted to be here, Gareth.
Good, and you're all the way from Scotland today. So what's it like in Scotland at the moment?
Lovely and sunny, 14 degrees. I've been in the garden already.
Ah, it's not too bad for middle of just coming up to spring. So maybe you might see some UFOs today, Stephen. You never know.
Oh, I wouldn't plan on it. It's a bit late for that. You never know.
Okay, Stephen. So what I want to do is get straight into it if I can. And I know you had an experience when you was around about 15 years of age. So if we can just start on that, if that's okay, and just explain to people that when you was about 15 or so, you say you believe you saw an alien. How did that occur? What was that?
Well, I when I was younger, I lived with my grandmother a lot, and I always knew that it wasn't just us here. I always knew. I don't know why I knew. I just knew. I knew 2 or 3 of my pals had experiences over the school field where they'd seen flying saucers and cylindrical shaped objects. And when we were in primary school, and I just thought, I know there's something out there. Why haven't I seen it? So when I was 15, I was sleeping in my nana's house. Don't know what time in the morning I woke up, but I woke up and I opened my eyes and I saw effectively what you would class as let's call it a 4-foot alien at the base of my bed.
Right.
At that moment, I was completely and utterly paralyzed. My eyes were open, but I couldn't move. I couldn't scream, and it was terrifying.
Right.
So
what did the alien actually look like? Can you describe what it was like and what it looked like?
It was your quintessential grey. And I'd never seen grey at that age because the UFO conspiracy, alien theory, all that gubbins wasn't really on the telly. It wasn't really in the newspapers in them days because we're going back to 1983, so it wasn't a big thing. All I could say I saw was like things like Star Trek, and it looked familiar. It looked a wee bit like the last scene in Star Trek as the credits were finishing, but it didn't have the color in it. It was sort of a really dark grey, big head, big eyes, very small mouth, and something I didn't really want to share my bedroom with. So
I don't blame you. And I mean, like, it's kind of like, so we're going back to the early 80s, okay? And I know you was a younger gentleman, so I know you was like 15 years of age, something like that. But if you look at the early 80s, then we've got the start of, say, the TV program, not TV, the movie E.T. So, so all that's starting to happen in the early 80s where that film had come out, and aliens were kind of like more of a mainstream. I mean, E.T. is probably the most famous alien we've got, or people could relate to. So would you say that had any effect on what you saw, or was it completely?
I hadn't seen E.T., and I don't even know what year that was out. I think I first saw E.T. in about 86, 87. Right. And as a kid, I very rarely went to the cinema, unless it was my grandmother that took me, and she certainly wouldn't have went to something like that. So I hadn't seen it.
So, Steve, how do you know that it wasn't a dream? How do you know it wasn't, just a dream and you woke up, you thought it was real?
but the same reason while I speak to spirit, I know it's real. It's the same reason I knew that it was real.
Yeah.
I was conscious. I was conscious to the point where I knew I wanted to get away but couldn't move.
Mm-hmm.
And also, I just had to close my eyes. And when I woke up, I actually woke up screaming, screaming the house down. But I just, on a telepathic level, I knew that I wasn't paralyzed, sleep paralysis, anything like that. And them days I didn't know that existed or what it was, I'll be honest. But I knew that it was real because of what I felt on a level which it's hard to explain, but I just knew.
So has that happened again since? Have you seen anything similar, or have you had that experience, or was it just a one-off experience?
That was a one-off. That was a one-off, but over the next number of years, I did actually see 3 other what I would class as UFOs, for want of a better phrase. One of them was when I first met my wife in '94. I can certainly tell you about that one if
yeah, I mean, just because we've seen the alien, and it's just strange that you've not only seen this alien, but then you've gone on to see UFOs as well. And normally people don't even see a UFO, let alone see 3, and to be actually totally aware that they've seen them. It wasn't a dream, and it wasn't you making it up, and it was because I know I've spoken to you before, Stephen. We chatted before, and I know you're a very genuine person, and you wouldn't come on and just make something up. So it's kind of like it intrigues me so much. Just before we go on to the UFOs, you said before when you was younger, and I believe this as well. We can't just be the only living, should we say, people or species, should we say, in such a vast universe. I mean, we just can't. So I agree with that. So do you think that aliens? Some people say that aliens live amongst us. What's your thoughts on that? Do you think that, or is that just something of a conspiracy?
To me, it's more believable that aliens are already here and have been for a significant number of years, millennia, if you like.
Yeah.
I'm one of the people that I'm pretty sure that we live on a planet which has not just one dimension, but many dimensions. Mm-hmm. So there is actually evidence out there with regards to the accidental pressing of the big red button, and that there are many instances over the years where there has been electronics closed down over military bases, which stopped the Cold War. Mm-hmm. On a number of occasions, that's happened where everything's was shut down and then a craft was seen above head. So I fully believe, and no one can pay me to think otherwise, that they're living amongst us and also with us, but in a side dimension. So,
in a side dimension, it's not actually in a living form, not actually in a physical, in both. Okay.
Yeah. If they're capable enough to come through a dimension as we would be as mediums to go and talk to the spirit world, then there's no reason why they can't both live here and also live next to us, as far as I'm concerned.
I kind of I understand that concept, and you've got to look at it where you're going to get in everything, even in the work. Because we'll go on to your mediumship, shortly. But even in mediumship, people question, people say, "Oh, you crackpots," and But when you've actually seen it, and we'll go on to the footage that you captured, and you was in the was it a Scottish paper? We'll go into that. You went into one of the papers at one point. You can explain about that in a minute. But yeah, I do actually think that they're either living side by side with us, or sometimes they're living actually in the physical form. Just before we go on to the UFOs, I just want to ask you your opinion, and maybe you've researched more over the years. What do you think is it a big cover-up? Do you think the governments of the world know more and they're not letting us know? You got Area 51 and the likes of things like that. What's your views on that, Stephen? What do you think?
I definitely think there's a cover-up, but I definitely know there's enough people out there to be able to discuss it, debate it. I think the world elite for want of a better phrase, are scared that it would cause panic, that there was actually people or other beings walking amongst us. I tend to think that it probably wouldn't cause as much panic as they might think, as long as we've got a hold and a grip on it. Because I think most people, when they really think about it, most people would think, well, is it possible that there's billions of stars and trillions of planets and blah, 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 that we're the only one? To me, that's completely and utterly illogical. But I do understand why it's been, let's say, blotted out or redacted and hard to get information, because there is that chance that it might cause economies to suffer. But I think it's down to a money basis more than anything else. I think people are stronger than they give the credit to, but the loss of control is what I think maybe the fear more than anything else. And I'm not one of these conspiracy theory guys. I'm just saying people who are in charge. I'm not one of these people that go on about Illuminatis and this is wrong and that's hidden and blah, blah, blah. This is a pretty serious subject that I understand why it's been pushed under the carpet, but I also understand that it's been pushed under the carpet just from the experience that I've had. So, and I have witnesses with one of my UFOs, my wife. So it's not like.
That's where I wanted to go into, Stephen. That's where I was kind of like leading into of like, well, for someone who's actually objectively seen, and you've not only seen it where I could turn around and say, oh, he was drunk, or you know what I mean? You actually had someone else there with you when you saw, was it your first UFO? Am I right?
First UFO.
Yeah.
First UFO.
You had your wife. So explain how you.
I was living in a village about 5 miles from where I came from. I just met the wife by accident, by the toss of a coin. The toss of a coin, I met the wife because me and my best pal were going to go on holiday to get away from women. We tossed the coin, I ended up at Fort William, and I met the wife the first night. So, but that's no coincidence either. But
this is also what I want to go on to that as well, Stephen. Do you know what I mean? Shortly, I want to go on to coincidence because you really do believe in coincidences. And that to me is kind of like, I think you're totally right. But yeah, sorry to interrupt you there, you know, but.
Right. 1994, I just met the wife. Obviously, I was out to impress because, you know, she was quite a tasty bit of totty like. And she came down to see me. And we went to the pub. We had, I would say, 4 or 5 pints. I was a young fella. She was a young lassie. We could have a few pints and not be drunk. And we didn't. We want to be drunk in each other's company anyway. So we were half cut, I would say. We left the pub. And to get to my house it was a rural area, although it was just outside Newcastle. We had to walk through. I thought we'll walk through the tatty field, just a quick way home. But it didn't end up being a quick way home. So. But in the distance, as we were halfway through the field, we saw this bunch of lights, red and blue, red and green. I'm not entirely sure. It was a long time ago. But there was a combination of red, green, or blue. And there was 3 lights. They were flashing away, you know, in the distance, in the sky. I thought, that's a bit strange. This was like 10:30 at night. So eventually, this object hovered above us. I would say about 200-300 foot above us. And you could see the outline of it. It looked like a giant cylinder. And the lights were very dominant at that point. And there was no noise, no wings, middle of the night. It looked like a solid object. And I thought, that's really strange. So I actually basically pushed my wife into this bush and I went in after her and we just looked at it. And the next thing you knew,
but hang on, Steve. Stephen, some people could turn around and say you had an intention, you know, oh, come on, love, get in the bush quick. You know,
no. I'll say that was a definite no, because it was a cold night, and it was a prickly bush, so that wasn't going to happen. Plus, I was a gentleman in them days, and I still am now, to be fair. But we looked up. I don't know how long it was. 5 seconds, 5 minutes. Can't remember. Things went kind of blank. The next thing we knew, this object disappeared, and all I saw was a trail of light, like bush. Like it had cut a hole through the atmosphere or whatever it did. I've no idea. So we looked at each other and went, "Did you see that?" "Yes, I saw that." And then we just walked home and just didn't talk about it that night.
Right.
A few weeks later, I saw another one,
Well, just come back to that one for a second, Stephen. Did anybody else in the village or in the town, did anybody else, you know, say, oh, they saw that last night, what also confirm what you and your wife saw?
I was renting a house, so I really didn't know very many people.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly, maybe I knew my next door neighbour to talk to, and my friend up the road. But we were literally in the middle of a field, so unless you were in the field or you were looking up at where we were, you wouldn't have seen it.
Yeah.
The way the area was built up, trees all around you, tatty field. Well, we're kind of on my own, so there wouldn't have been probably anybody that saw it. I didn't report it because at the end, in them days, you just thought, people think I'm mad if I report it, so I didn't.
Yeah. So you went on then to see another one, you said a few weeks later. Do you think that could have been the same one, or do you know?
Well, there was a tragedy happened at my mum's house. A young laddie fell through the greenhouse roof, and he died.
Right.
I was asked to come over to help out, and that night when I went back home, I actually looked up at the stars. Now, this is a little bit spiritual to me. I'm a little bit emotional about it. But I looked up to the stars and I saw a star come from nowhere. It looked like a star, and it stopped next to a star. And then it went across to another star, and then down again, and then across in a square formation, went to the original star, and then flew off. Now, as I'm getting older and wiser, I don't know whether that, I mean, I know it was a UFO because satellites don't work like that. Aeroplanes can't travel that fast. Meteors go in a straight line. So it had to be something. It was either a UFO or it was a sign to say that that young fella had got to spirit, and that was God telling me. So the jury's out on that. I just know I was a very emotional person that night.
That was more of, if I'm right in saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that more kind of like in the distance? Was that more kind of like you saw that in the sky, where the other one you saw clearly?
One was right above my head, the other one was way up in the stars. Yeah.
The other one was like, yeah. Okay, so which one actually made, because I know you've seen 2 or 3, was it the next one that actually made the papers, and why did it make the papers?
Well, I took a walk. It was a very, very, very sunny, cold February morning in 2005. My work was sporadic at best, so I took a walk up one of the local hills, and halfway up, I decided, because where I was, you could see the west coast and east coast of Scotland. It's the waste of Scotland, the central belt. So there's only 40, 50 miles maybe between. So I was up high enough to see both sides of the coast roughly, and I took a panoramic video of the area. In them days, the camera phones were pretty new to the market. I was one of the few that had one. So as I was taking the view, I saw something in my peripheral vision. It was a black shape, and I just ignored it because I thought, "Oh, this is lovely." The next thing I knew, I thought, "What was that?" And I looked, and it had gone. So I looked down at the phone. I went, "Something not right here." And I pressed the buttons, and I got the record back up, and it said, "Whoa." Whoa, I wasn't expecting that in a video.
Yeah, so Stephen, can I just jump in there? I think that's the time I want to jump in and just ask you a question about that. Okay. And anybody watching this or listening to it, they can head over to, is it Stephen Bird, your YouTube channel? Is that where that will be?
I don't know how I got it.
If you head over to YouTube, everybody, and if you just type in Stephen Bird and UFO, I'm sure it'll come up. Now, you sent me the footage of that. And one of the questions, and you just answered my question. Okay. So one of the questions was, if you watch the video, you can see that you have panned past it. Okay. So one of my questions was, why did you pan past it? Why didn't you go, hang on, what was that? You know, but you just explained now. And rightly so, because that was, to me, that didn't make sense. Okay, so I wanted you to explain what you were doing, you know, because you understand what I'm saying. It's kind of, if you got a camera to your face, then you would see it and you go, hang on, what, whoa, and you zoom in. So was you?
It was at the point where my vision, I only had peripheral vision. It was when that shape appeared, and I saw it just at the side, and I was too busy taking the video of this. It wasn't a concern of mine. I don't know what that is. It doesn't matter. So I just continued. So it was I don't know why I didn't go back and have a look. I really don't know to this day. I just didn't.
I know what he's saying. It's kind of like if you've got a camera to your face, like what would they call it, a camcorder, then you would have probably seen it as you panned. You know, if you was just holding the camera in front of you, I presume that's what you was doing. You know, you didn't have it to your face, and you just like, and then you was looking at the camera, and you kind of, oh, what was that? And you went back. So you know, I kind of feel as if, you know, you've answered that question, which I had, and it makes more sense. So can you understand then, without you actually answering that question, why people would turn around and go, why did you zoom past that? Why did you?
Absolutely,
You know, absolutely. Stephen, that was my thought. Do you know what I mean? And I showed it to my partner and I said, what do you think? And he said, well, you've got to ask him why you pan past, because normally you would turn around and go, hang on, stop, zoom, and you know, get as much footage as you can of it. So yeah, and as I say, everybody head over to the YouTube channel, and I'll put the details on if that's okay with you, Steve, as well, where people can find them. And you know, I'm glad I had the chance there for you to explain that. So sorry to have interrupted you there. So how did that get into the paper? Did you send it to them, or?
What happened was I reported it to Prestwick Airport, which was where in the old days, since found out, that's where you would report UFOs. And the chap who answered the phone says, we don't do that anymore. The UK government decided not to record anymore for their own reason. But that might go back to what we were talking about before. The fact that they just want an under the carpet job. So you don't report these things anymore. But he did say, good luck, as if he had many phone calls like that before. Now, you have to consider where I live is around about 10 miles from Bonnybridge. And that is the UK hotspot for UFOs. And it's the Falkirk Triangle, it's called. So I'm not the only one that's seen them over the years. There's been hundreds of sightings over the years. Sky News. I phoned Sky News. I phoned ITV. I went to see ITV. ITV said they would, then they didn't. Sky News came to my house, said, "Oh yeah, well we'll do an interview." But then they didn't. Right. So I thought, well, how come these big organisations are coming and saying yes to me and then not doing anything about it? Are they trying to hide something, or not want to put their name to something, or does it look too real? That was me with a wee conspiracy there, and I'm pretty sure that's probably what it was. But I don't know. No one's told me. So I then went to the newspapers. The newspapers were quite happy to take the story, photograph down the field, and they got some guy in from one of the universities, and he discussed the alternative idea, which was lens flare. I totally get that, because I've had lens flare on a camera before. Not a problem. I don't mind if people have their own view about this, because it's not a normal thing. So there's not everybody's going to ever agree on this, you know. But with my past experience and what I'd actually seen on my peripheral, I know what's what. I know what it was. But I'm no problem with people just, you know, disagreeing with me. It's not a problem at all, because these things do happen.
Yeah, and I guess it's kind of like you've got to be able to rule out anything before then you turn around and say, well, if it's not that, and it's not that, and it's not that, what is it? Do you know? So the best way to do is throw yourself open and say, yeah, look into it. If you think it's something to do with the camera, fine. If you think it's something, you prove it to me, you know, that it's not what I think it is, and that's the best way to go for it. And you know, so they took it up, and just as we just go on that, they took the story up, and did you get any?
Sunday Mail.
Pardon?
It was a Sunday Mail.
Oh, so
the Sunday Mail. It's just the paper of the Mirror. It's a Scottish national newspaper, the Sunday Mail.
So it was a national paper. It wasn't just a local.
It was a national.
So did you get any comeback on that? Did you get any? I know it probably was pre what we've got the good old Facebook now. But did you get anything, or did anybody else come to you and say, I saw the same thing, or anything like that?
Well, in them days, I like going to the pub and occasionally, and I did have a few of my pals say, well, I saw something similar. But, you know, I didn't get any phone calls, any emails. I didn't know what an email was in 2005. I mean, I'm a bit of a dinosaur. But no, I didn't get anybody come back.
So you've not seen anything since. You've not had any experiences since.
No.
So what about in the area? Just kind of like go on to, because I want to go into your mediumship if I can as well shortly. But just before I do, you say that you live in a known area for UFOs
Yeah.
in the UK. So have you heard of any other sightings through your own local community or your local press? Is it still being reported today?
I honestly don't read the newspapers, and I don't have a huge circle of friends because I don't socialize a lot now. So I don't have anything on a personal basis that folk have seen. I just know that when I showed them this video, they went, "Oh, I saw something similar to that." And as far as the newspapers are concerned, you do occasionally see things that are in the newspapers in the local level, but I don't really read them because I don't need to read them. I don't need my story backed up. I don't need someone to show me what I've already seen on a number of occasions. So
that's not what I mean. You know, I'm just kind of like, is it still going on, even though you've not seen it? You know,
it's still going on. Yeah.
And people are still, you know, even though you've not seen it, people are still saying, "Oh yeah, I've seen this." You know, so I think really you're kind of lucky that you're living it now. I want to go to because I think this is so interesting. I want to go to really how you came about to live where you are now in such a kind of like known area for UFOs, if nothing else, because you believe that there's not necessarily well, I don't know, you tell me. When we've spoken before, you said to me, you know, you don't believe in coincidences, and you said this earlier on, you know.
Yeah.
So I know when we spoke a while ago, because me and you've had a couple of chats before now, and you know, and I know it kind of all started when you was around about 6 years of age, and from there you kind of felt as if everything was placed for you. So just kind of like just briefly run through, you know, why you feel your life. And now I've heard bits of you, as I said, we spoke before, where your life isn't a coincidence.
I first saw a spirit when I was 6 years old, and my best friend was actually doing a sleepover at my house, so he saw it as well. I saw this wee laddie in the corner of my room, and he had a cat on his shoulder. He would have been about my age. I subsequently saw him many times after that. Incidentally, I have a nephew that slept in that bedroom who's in his mid-30s now. He's seen him. And another nephew who's in his early 20s. He's seen him. So there's been, it's 2 generations, but 3 people have seen the wee ghost. I'm not going to call him a ghost. He was a spirit because he could react. He wasn't on a loop. He could react. He waved. So that was the first time that I saw, but I saw him a number of times. Spirit has dropped me many clues over the years, or many hints rather, that I had something a little bit different about me, but I ignored them, and I can't remember most of the things, but I know it's happened. But the UFO, so the alien, was the big instigator to say, look, this isn't all what you see. But I had a rough childhood, and I was brought up by a grandparent to get me out of that situation. But my nana was actually a medium as well. So, and her sister was a working platform medium. So she sort of, I'm going to say, introduced the idea of the mediumship to me. And from that, it grew. She didn't give me any training or anything, and I just listened to what she was talking about. But it was back in 1974. We came on holiday. This is how I met my wife. Back in 1974, we came on holiday to Stirling, and we camped in the caravan site, which is now just a bunch of trees and a fence around it. It's defunct. And we stayed here for a week. And I remember going up to Wallace Monument, looking over at the age of 6 and thinking, I'm going to live here one day. And I distinctly remember saying that, tell me, Mum. And she says, oh, that's nice, dear. Anyway, zoom on 20 years further. Me and my best pal, who's more like a brother, he was going to not marry his fiance, and I was getting dumped by my girlfriend at the same time. So we thought, let's go on holiday. So we threw the tent in the car, and we literally tossed a coin, left, right, left, right, left, right. We ended up in Fort William, which was 20 years later, and the place where on the first night, even though I wanted to get away from women, I met my wife, or wife-to-be. So long story short, he got married. I ended up meeting my wife, and then I got married. And I lived in Fort William for a long time. So at the age of 6, Stirling, Fort William, holiday, okay? I forgot to mention that. I was on that holiday, was also Fort William. Age of 26, I met my wife, toss of a coin, and now we live behind the fence of the original campsite in Stirling.
Right. So so you kind of like, you don't just, when you turned around years ago and you said, I'm going to live here, you kind of like near enough to the point that I'm actually going to live here.
I'm also almost in the tent.
Yeah.
That's how close I am. So that holiday in 1974, I'm married to someone from Fort William, and I now live at the back of the fence from the actual caravan site. But it's not just that; it gets even better, because I was born in the village of Wrighton, which was previously County Durham, but it was Wrighton on Tyne, right on the river. And in 1297, William Wallace sacked Newcastle, or part of it. The villagers from Wrighton came down to the river and goaded Mr. said Wallace, Braveheart, and he brought his clansmen over the river and sacked the village I was born in. I now, when I look out my front door, look at Wallace Monument every day.
Right.
So it ain't no coincidence. The village I was born in was sacked by William Wallace, and I now live next to his monument in a place where I came on holiday in 1974.
Wow. So that's really is kind of like, you are meant to be where you're meant to be.
Yeah.
You know, and as I say, you know, there's so much and that, you know, I can talk to you about. And I do want to go on to your mediumship work. I know it's a passion of yours. I know you mentioned it earlier about sensing spirit and knowing spirited ranger. As I say, I'll go on to that. But just before I do, just about the UFO quickly, I forgot to ask you, do you think that UFOs, aliens, other life forms, whatever you may want to call them, do you think that they have an influence, not necessarily in our lives, but in the world itself?
This is what I think. I think there are very many, potentially millions of alien species around the universe. I also think there's potentially multiverses out there, not just one universe. So the numbers in my mind are unlimited as how many species are out there. I also believe that we have very many different species living here within another dimension. So I believe that they share the same Earth that we do. And it's theoretically possible, but in my mind, it's probable. So that I believe that they're both out there and here.
Yeah. See, the reason I asked that as well is because I know in conversations with my partner and things like that, she says that she kind of feels as if there's a government beyond a government, you know. So now we are talking conspiracy. So is that government beyond the governments? Is that alien form? You know, so we can go so deep into it. But I just wanted to have your opinion of, like, do you think, you know, there's something out there which is kind of like, I mean, you know, Stephen, just like me. We went from, me and you, when we were young lads, going to a phone box, putting 5p in phone and ringing someone up.
Yeah.
To what seemed like in a split second, we can do what we're doing now, you know, and it just seems like the last 20, 30 years has just, in technology alone, do you know, I'm like, wow, where has this come from? Do you know, so things like that, I tend to think, hang on a minute, you know, if we just, you know, but then again, you look at the last century or so, you know, as similar things, from being able to fly, to be able to do this, you know. So then that kind of makes me feel like, again, we're going to go too deep into it. You go back to, say, the Incas, and you go back to, you know, all them kind of, you know, there's more to it, where they were drawing aliens on stones and things like that, you know, and runways, you know, so there must have been more to it. But, you know, it's such a fascinating kind of subject. And when I spoke to people over the last few days and people have contacted me, they have been saying, you know, we're so fascinated. We can't wait to hear what Stephen's got to say about his experience, because we've seen things and we think we've seen things, you know. So I know there's people who are looking forward to watching you and hearing your opinions on UFOs. And I know you know, going to change it there as well, but because I also know that you're a working medium, you know, so you've got that sense of knowing about what's real and what's not, you know. And I know you've turned around and said, yeah, it's in your family. We've had, you know, you've mentioned about it being your family. Was it? I think it was your mother and your grandmother, your auntie. Sorry.
Yeah, me and great auntie. Yeah.
Your grandmother, your auntie there. So going into your journey as a medium, was that just a natural progression of your life, Stephen, or was it a case of, you know, you accidentally fell into a spiritualist church, or, you know?
Right. Well, it wasn't natural at all. Actually, there was a guy I now work with. Well, I don't now, but I did work with him. One day, he started talking about his mum and dad that had passed away, and that he'd been to the local spiritualist church. And I thought, that's something, I remember that from the past. I'd like to look into that. So, long story short, I went to the church that night after speaking to him. Now, if we go back a few years, I actually immigrated to Dubai. And at that time, I didn't know this guy. But when I immigrated to Dubai, I actually got his job. Right. And then many years later, I ended up working with him. Where did that come from? I didn't know a guy. I immigrated to a foreign country and got the job that he used to have. Then I worked with him and did for many years. But then on a conversation that I had with him, I ended up going to the spiritualist church, which was kind of weird, because then I decided to look into it. So another coincidence, it ain't a coincidence. I don't think it was natural how I ended up in the spiritualist church or working as a medium. I think it was sort of meant to be. Much as I tried to stop, because I went for a few months and I went, this isn't for me. And for no apparent reason, I just decided, well, I need to go back. I felt like I was getting pushed back into it. And that the rest is history after that.
Yeah. So, so now you work as a medium. Do you do that? I know you've got what I would call, you've got a proper job as well. You know, so I know you've got that. But do you do demonstrations? Do you do private readings? You know?
I did before COVID struck. I did do both. I've only been a medium. Well, it depends on how you class a medium, because when you start to study it, you're called a fledgling, or trainee, or whatever words you want to get thrown at you. I find those words a little bit unusual, because it doesn't matter how experienced a medium you are, you never stop learning. I mean, I haven't been doing it for 20 odd years like you. I've been in it for 3, but I just feel as like I'm scratching the surface now. But the surface is, and it's quite deep, the surface. So I don't think you ever stop learning. But I started a platform, and I was just working in the church doing private readings on a Wednesday night for a couple of years. And then about a year ago or so, year and a half ago, I did my first platform. And I thought I was going to be scared, but and I had the butterflies, and Spirit told me, wait for the butterflies and you'll be fine. And this was an old church, an old community centre, sorry. And I'm a big lad, I'm 18 stone. And when I walk on floorboards, they squeak, right? They've got to, because I'm big, right? But that first night, I did my first demonstration. Their place was mobbed. There was 50 odd people in there. And not one of those floorboards, much as I paced up and down, I can't stand still when I'm working the platform. I paced up and down, and not one floorboard squeaked during my demonstration. None.
Right.
You tell me how that happened.
Yeah.
The next week, I went, and I was just in the congregation. I walked across said floorboards. Every single one was squeaking away.
You know, Spirit has got such a way of taking things away, and I know that from experience, from illness. I mean, I'm talking. I've spoken to a lady about her mediumship, and you can find the episode with Jenny Marie, and she talks openly about her mental health. And you know, when she works on platform or she does demonstrations and shows, You know, she says, you know, it's as if like they've just taken it away. But as soon as I finish that demonstration, it's as if Jenny Marie comes back. And I understand that. So people can listen to that podcast and go and see it as well. It's out there. But I understand that as well. So I suffer a lot with pain, you know, but when I'm working, it's as if it just disappears. You know, so they've got such an amazing way of making things as easy as they can, so not distract. So maybe taking the floorboard, which I've never heard that one before, but taking the floorboard away is taking the distraction away from you, but also thinking, hang on, these poor people sat in the audience here, sat in the congregation, all they're going to hear all night is, you know, so they've got an amazing way of doing it. So one thing I'm asking everybody as well, Stephen, doing this podcast is, what do you think is your, and you probably answered it, you know, tell me if you have, but what's your best experience and what's your worst experience? If you can just...
I'll start with the worst one first. And it was when I was just early doors. It was early doors. I'd done probably about 6 months of work at the church. So every Wednesday, without fail, I'd probably done 2 or 3 readings. So I don't know, I'm not doing the maths, but a few readings I've done. And I was really excited. I thought this was what I was meant to do. And there was one afternoon, I wasn't working, so I had a couple of pints at the pub. And in the evening, I felt as if I was drawn to my neighbour's house. And I ended up doing a reading for my neighbour. And I felt somebody push my shoulder violently while I was doing the reading for quite a long time. And it was getting to the point where I was telling them to just pack that in. And at the end, I closed down, and I actually had an extreme pain in my trapezium muscle. It actually tore my muscle, which the lesson for me was, 1, don't drink while you're working with spirit. And 2, your protocols have to be adopted properly. And that was a lesson, because I know that was a bad spirit that was just pushing and pushing and pushing. And my best experience by a long way was the many soul rescues I've done. I started working with my guardian angel a number of 2 years ago, and he was the one that first got me into soul rescue. And I don't know how many mediums work with the guardian angel, but I certainly do. But a long story short, I was with the caravan in Culloden, at the caravan site just up the road from there, and we took a walk around the Culloden site. And at this point, I was a platform medium. I did have very good intuition, and I felt the energy that was still in the battlefield. There were still people fighting. I saw it in my third eye, and I talked to 1 or 2 clansmen. And I did this over a space of 2 days. On the first day, myself and my angel created the light, if you like, for allow people to pass through. And on the second day, there was about 7 or 8 in the first day. The second day, there was almost 80. Now, I went to the Cameron men, which was at the top of the battlefield, and they were basically still fighting. And they saw me coming and just went, no, we're all right. We're just, in spirit language. And I walked on there, and I went to the Athol men, which were the ones, incidentally, the cameramen were where my wife came from in Fort William. And I was kind of taken aback that they didn't want any help. So we went to the Athol men, or the Athol men as they were called. And there was women, children, and clansmen all waiting for me to turn up. It was kind of weird. And my wife's looking at me going, what are you up to? Are you doing that again? Right. So she just lets me get on with it. It probably does look crazy, but we did the same thing again. And there was literally 70, 80 people walked through the light. We went back to the caravan, put the table outside, sparked the beer open. The wife started reading her book, fell asleep. I looked at the caravan, and there's this big band of bright red around the base, between the base of the caravan and the ground, right the way around the caravan. What is that? I thought to myself. I closed my eyes, and in my third eye, I got a bunch of clansmen with their claymores in the sky, just basically screaming, like as a war scream. And I'm going to take that as a sign that it was a sign of thanks from spirit for the help. But there are still a lot of people up on the Culloden battlefield that need help.
That's kind of a lovely validation into that's a lovely validation. And I know I've spoken to, again, another podcast, Karen Marshall, who talks about spirit rescue and things like that, and hopefully at some point I might be able to get you back on, because there's so much we could talk about with your spirit rescue work and other things. And I know also you've written a book, so hopefully we can get you back on. It's not been published yet, but you know, as soon as it's published, let me know. I'll definitely push it out there for people, because I'm sure it's an interesting story for people to read. So let me know when that's out, and hopefully again we can get you back on to talk about the book as well. You know, so if people want to either see your work or book you for reading or anything like that, is there a way they can get hold of you? Are you on Facebook, or do you have a website or anything like that?
I'm on Facebook, and I could have about 6 months to a year ago decided I do have an account on Facebook for my mediumship, but I haven't felt as if I wanted to work just now, and the reason why, I don't know. Okay. I really don't know. But if some people want to get in touch with me, I'm absolutely fine with that. But it's on Facebook, so I'll help them if I can. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to go looking for work. Yeah. I felt as if anybody needed me, then I'm there. Yeah. And if they wanted to phone me, that's fine. I can help.
As I said, just head over to Stephen's Facebook page, and there you'll be able to find out when the book is being released. I'm sure you'll put it on there as well. And you know, in the meantime, Stephen, it's been absolutely fascinating. Can I say thank you for joining us on the Psychic Chat Show this week? And I'm sure I'm going to get you back on to talk about your book and the other experiences as well. So, Stephen, thank you very much.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.